All right, I got Dr. Larry Weiss on the show. He is the CEO and founder of Symbiome skincare products. Dr. Larry, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for inviting me.
Man, I feel like I've known you forever. We were just talking a little bit before we went live here, and you have a lot of history in the not only medical farm or the skincare industry. One of your flagship products back in the day, which I remember 10 plus years ago, having gone to the bulletproof health conferences and stuff, was Mother Dirt, the AO Mist. It was like a probiotic skincare, and to me at the time, it was like one of the first skincare probiotics. I don't know, was it the first?
It actually was the first. It was the first, and a probiotic is actually the thing that distinguishes a probiotic from a prebiotic and a postbiotic, and we can talk about that a little bit. Is a probiotic is actually alive.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time anyone ever did anything like this. It was a crazy idea and difficult. But it created this entire category of skin microbiome products, which at this point you see everywhere. Although, my concern is a lot of these talk the story, but don't actually walk the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to talk to you about it because back then, this is a decade ago, it made sense to me. And I think back then, I think a lot of us were talking about this idea of like terrain theory versus germ theory. And so the idea of like your skin being alive and having a terrain, and to me, that just made sense versus putting lotions and all these other things on it. I was like, yeah, this makes sense to me. And that's why I was a consumer of AO Mist way back then. But I'm always curious, like, how did you get started? What was the passion that drove to the impetus of that? Like, how did you start going down this rabbit hole? Where did it all come about?
Yeah, and let me go back in time a little bit, and then I'm going to go back in time a lot. So we're going to time travel today,
Let's
and
do
I'm
it.
going to take you on a journey that's going to start, early in my experience, and then we're going to go back in the human experience, thousands of years, and come back here. I started my career as actually a natural products chemist at Cornell. I was very interested in the types of things that plants made, all these really interesting compounds. And then came out to Stanford for medical school in the 70s, and internal medicine, intensive care medicine, board certified in anesthesia. I'm a bit of a recovering academic. But anyone who was paying attention in clinical medicine back there had to have noticed there was a significant growth of what we at the time called things like autoimmune disease. But all of these things, whether it's cardiovascular disease or cancer, these are actually inflammatory conditions, and they express themselves differently in different individuals based on their genetic makeup, their life experience, their exposure, but they all have an inflammatory component. But the incidence of inflammatory disease has tripled in the past 30 years. And whereas what we were doing in medicine is we were spending a lot of time fixing the consequences of this, there wasn't a lot of understanding about what was behind it. And I got very interested in why is there so much inflammatory disease? What's behind all of this? And left the practice of medicine in the mid 90s. There was a convergence in the Bay Area of this emerging technology sector and a growing wellness movement and things that were happening in healthcare. And at the time, a lot of my practice in that area, I started working with design firm IDEA, was around medical products and devices and how they could impact how people manage this. But right around 2000, the early data around the microbiome started to come out. You see, we developed the Human Genome Project to study our favorite subject, us.
Yeah.
And what we discovered on sequencing all this DNA, a whole lot of the DNA that we thought was us wasn't us. And in fact, that we are a holobiont. We are what we would before called the host, and then these microbial ecosystems that we started to call our microbiome. But in fact, when people ask what's the microbiome, and we answered the question with, well, those are all the microbes that live on you and in you. That's a genuinely unsatisfying answer for most people for at least three reasons. And the first one is We're talking about something you cannot see or feel and telling you it is a powerful force in your life, and that sounds like the purview of religion.
Yep.
And we're asking you to believe that. The second thing is most people's relationship with the microbial world is adversarial. We think it's out there trying to make us sick or kill us. And then you go to Dr. Google and you come away confused. So let me recalibrate this. Your microbiome is you. It's as much part of you as your cardiovascular system or your brain or your kidneys or anything else. It's just invisible and you can't see it. But it is an absolutely essential part of you. We do not exist without it, and it doesn't exist without us. We have co-evolved together, and in fact, the word symbiome refers to a co-located, co-evolving ecosystem. So I want you to think of your microbiome as part of you, very much the same way any other organ system is, and it contributes to our health. We have been inculcated in what is the germ theory of disease, which is there's a bacteria or a fungus or a virus, and it's a bad actor and it makes us sick. I want you to start considering a much larger, much broader germ theory of health. And in the germ theory of health, this microbial ecosystem, which is part of us, and the boundaries are not where you think they are. In fact, there are no boundaries. We are harmonized with the ecosystem in which we live. And all of those connections are a source of resilience. And when we talk about health, if I ask you to define health, you're going to come up with something around, well, I'm not sick that I know about yet, at least. But based on the work that we've done and our understanding of the microbiome from an evolutionary biology standpoint, health is the resilience in response to stress, the ability to bend. And
Ooh.
we've lost that resilience. And when we break, what we see is inflammation in all of its various forms. And by the way, it is a systemic problem. You may see it on your skin, but it is systemic. It is in your gut. And we are becoming more and more inflamed. Okay, so right around 2000, I got interested in this area, have started a couple of companies. And then right around 2013, we started Mother Dirt based on the notion there was a specific bacteria, it's called an ammonia oxidizing bacteria, that was part of our physiology, and that when in losing it, and we lost it, so we don't have it anymore, we lost its contribution to our metabolism and to our health.
Hmm.
And in Mother Dirt, we found a way to actually put that living bacteria into a spray bottle that you could apply to our skin. And we found there were all sorts of anti-inflammatory benefits and others as well. In fact, when you spray that bacteria on your skin, in addition to reducing inflammation, it lowered your blood pressure. And
Wow. I
then,
wasn't aware of that. I didn't realize that.
well, yeah, and that was never promoted as part of it. It was an observation that came out of one of the clinical studies. Um, and then in 2017, I was approached by a young man whose father was an American anthropologist in the 70s and 80s. And his mother was one of the subjects of his study. And he studied a group of hunter-gatherers living, an isolated group of hunter-gatherers living deep in the Amazon called Yanomami. And what makes them interesting is they don't have any inflammatory disease at all. So in terms of their skin, things like acne, eczema, rosacea, and psoriasis don't exist. Uh, their coronary artery calcification in their 70s and 80s is better than ours in our teens. They don't sunburn and they don't get skin cancer. In fact, as far as we know, they don't get cancer at all. And they also have the most diverse microbiome that's ever been reported in a human population.
Wow.
So we raised some money and sponsored 3 academic research expeditions, and we have built the most complete survey of what a biologically intact human microbiome, not just skin, gut, oropharynx, nasopharynx, looks like in a population that lives a disease-free life. Now, on looking at that, what we've discovered is we've lost 80% of the taxonomic diversity. That's the who is there. But what's more important is what were they doing? So when you interrogate this data to find out what they were doing, we find that there were all sorts of contributions that were part of our evolutionary legacy. And I thought in the beginning that, well, we washed them off with soap, we're too clean. And that was a very easy explanation, but it turns out it's much more complicated than that. We evolved as foragers. We were creatures of scarcity. We are both, we're omnivores. We have the dentition of both a carnivore and an herbivore. We do need some meat. We don't need much. We don't need nearly as much as we get, but we do need some. And if a plant in our environment was edible, we knew that and we ate it. And more importantly, we knew which ones we couldn't eat. And when we did that, we sampled their microbiome too. And that harmonized us with the environment in which we lived. And what we learned on skin is what we lost is what's called a biofilm. And a biofilm is a microbial ecology that lives on our skin or on any surface. Every surface has a biofilm. Everything that has been reported about the microbiome, our skin microbiome today, that portion is engrafted into our tissue. We all have that. That part, it starts at birth, and early on in childhood, it becomes fully populated. That's what we have. Relative abundance will shift, but those are the bacteria, the fungus, the yeasts that will accompany you the rest of the way through life. And it does a lot of things for us, but has two very big jobs. The first of those is it's called colonization resistance. So fully occupy the ecosystem of our skin that an outsider can't get a foothold. They are the best adapted bacteria for that ecosystem. And the second thing is they communicate directly with our immune system. So if there is a breach, they're able to mobilize an immune response and, once the breach is cured, demobilize it. The piece that we lost, the biofilm, when we started looking at it functionally, this is the piece that we lost when we moved from living in nature to living in a built environment. That has it does a lot of things, three very big jobs. One is it harmonizes us with the environment in which we're living. Those are the bugs that solved every biologic problem necessary to live there. And it will be different in different ecosystems. When you look at functionally, you look at their transcriptome, their RNA, what is it they're actually doing? What you discover is there's two big clusters of genes that we don't have. And the first one is protection against oxidation, rusting. Oxidation and inflammation are two different perspectives on the exact same process. The chemist in me sees oxidation and says, if you don't start thinking about electrons as metabolites, it's not going to make sense to you. And the immunologist in me sees inflammation, but we're looking at the same thing. We live in an oxygen environment. We're bathed in ultraviolet. Bacteria solved this problem 2.7 billion years ago. And they didn't solve it by developing sunscreen, by the way. The second big cluster of genes are all these secondary metabolic pathways, many of which make things that we need and don't make for ourselves. And we evolved inside this living envelope, an envelope that we no longer have because we're harmonized with our environment. When you live in a natural environment and you don't use soap and wash it off, you will get a biofilm, and that biofilm will provide all of this. And for call it 390 of the 400,000 years Homo sapiens has been on this planet, we all had a biofilm. But as soon as we started moving out of that into a built environment, we harmonized with this. And today we spend 90% of our time indoors. So in one of our
So Dr.
experiments,
Weiss, what's the solution? Don't shower?
um,
Get
I'm not going
outside
to tell
more?
you not
Eat
to
some dirt?
shower. No. And so the solution is
Sorry,
actually
I cut
this.
you off, but I was thinking about that. I'm sure a
No,
lot of people are thinking too, like, okay, well then what do we do? I mean, I think and I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think of just circadian rhythm disruption and everything you're talking about and just the lights and everything. And yeah, being in this.
so how do we
Yeah.
solve this?
Yeah.
Well, we could try to put the bacteria back, but there's only one way to do that. That would go off and live in the jungle, and we'd be dead in about a week because we're not particularly good at that.
Correct.
Um, So what we discovered is I don't need the who, I need what they were doing. So we built precision ferments using natural fermentation of many of the bacteria that we lost, sustainably harvest plants from that ecosystem, from the Amazon, and ferment them naturally. Same way you make wine. You grind them up, you allow them to ferment. They will express many of the missing metabolic pathways. And then you separate the oil because your skin is an oily environment, and that has all of these. It doesn't have all of the missing stuff. Let me rephrase that. It has many of the missing components, and then we use those oils to make skincare. Fermentation is the connective tissue of life.
Mm.
If you ask me, what can I do for my gut? Should I take probiotics? And the answer is those things, most of those are not clinically validated. So they might work and they might not work. We don't know. And because of the economics of that validation, we're probably not going to see that. But you know what you can do? Eat more fermented food, because that is clinically validated. And this started with Elie Melnikov over 100 years ago, who noticed that Bulgarian peasants who ate fermented milk, yogurt, were healthier and lived longer than people who didn't. So, and a lot of this work has been done by Justin Sonnensberg lab at Stanford, but there's a lot of data behind this. Eat more fermented food, and what you're doing is you're reconnecting with the microbial world. We have an industrialized food process. It doesn't connect us with anything. So, kefir, Greek yogurt, try to do this without the things that don't have sugar in it. The sugar is actually, if sugar was a new drug, it's so inflammatory, we probably wouldn't be able to get it through the FDA. But kimchi, sauerkraut, make your own fermented food. It has the advantage. In one of Sonnenberg's studies that was published, I think 3 years ago, 10 weeks of fermented food and 19 biomarkers for inflammation were reduced and gut diversity was increased. If that was a drug, pharma would be all over it. It's not a drug, it's food. And you know what? It's delicious. So
Wow.
again, what we have done is found a way to do this on skin. So instead of doing everything that we were trained to do in medicine and everything that we think about, which is you come in, you've got a problem, we give you a diagnosis, or in skincare, we call it personalization. Say, okay, this is what you have. Here's what I have to fix your broken thing. We now have built this reference point of what did it look like for most of the time that we were on this planet, way back in time. And now that I know what it looked like, I can do something that we were never able to do before, which is I can restore the resilience. You
Mm.
can't restore something if you don't know what it looked like. So that's what we built. We know what it looks like. Now,
Yeah.
I will tell you, we're just getting started. It's very, very early. The biggest myth about the microbiome is that we know anything about it yet.
You're right. Yeah.
So there's so much more work that needs to be done. But, and this is what I would tell your listeners, you want to demand that that work be done with some degree of rigor. Okay? Not just marketing, but actual rigor. You want to make good decisions. You're trying to do the right thing for yourself and for your family. And in order to do that, you actually need evidence, data, but that's expensive. And in today's world, it's easier just to put a product into the market and spend money on marketing. What is really important to us, both as individual scientists in this company and as a company, is try to accumulate that body of data and make it available so you can make those decisions. And I will tell you, we are just getting started. This is no simple task, but it is important. And so, you want an action item, ask good questions. Don't accept answers that don't pass the smell test for you. And recognize that science is a disciplined practice of wonder. It's driven by our curiosity, our desire to make things better, maybe in a desire to make money, but it must be tempered by a deep sense of humility, because our knowledge is finite and our ignorance is always going to be infinite. This is a system that is billions of years old. Um, this is a microbial planet. Microbes have been around for 4 billion years. Animals showed up, call it 600 or 700 million years ago. Uh, Primates, maybe 7 million. Homo sapiens, maybe 400 or 500,000 at most. We're not the pinnacle of evolution. We're the spoiled and arrogant newcomers. We're the beneficiaries of a 4 billion-year-old trust fund that is insanely complex and resilient, which we seem, by the way, determined to squander. So
Yep.
ask good questions. If something doesn't look right, look, food didn't need to be fixed. Food was good. So make good decisions. But the idea of, things we're going to put it in a pill or something like that, that's who we are today. But we should reflect on who we were and where we came from and try to recover as much of what we have lost. That is what's behind everything that we're doing personally as scientists and with this company.
Yeah, that's amazing. By the way, infinitely stupid. That sounded like something Richard Feynman might say. Maybe you guys studied with each other. I wanted
I
to,
certainly read a lot of his stuff.
yeah, he's so good. I wanted to ask you because so what you're saying, and I'm just curious because I love what you said. We've got a long way to go because that's exciting to do. That means like, man, like what else do we not know that we can find out and make it better? But you're already doing stuff with Symbiome. I mean, and you've got dedicated folks like award-winning actress Kate Hudson using your product. So like, there must have been some rigor to show and like, say, hey, like this is we're already seeing some results just with what we do know. So I'm just curious for people that don't know a lot about Symbiome, what are some of the results and what are some of the things you guys are seeing?
So again, what we've spent the past 7 years, we've just it's under review right now for publication in a peer-reviewed journal. Is building the reference point and finding a way to use. Look, science has essentially three phases here. The first one is what we used to call basic research. That isn't go out there and find me something that does this. That's take the best tools you have and see what's out. Let's see what's out there. And you need to go in unbiased. So it's more than just your macular vision, which is laser focused on seeing something. You have your peripheral vision because this, if I didn't see it, I would not have believed it is backwards. If you don't believe it, you become incapable of seeing it. And this field is um, this is a scientific revolution. And the life sciences today, we're doing systems biology. We're no longer doing this very kind of linear stuff. We're doing systems biology. So the first part is the basic science piece there. And that's what we have spent a lot of time building the foundation for. The second one is, okay, it used to be called applied science. It's now called translational science. How do I take that and do something useful and valuable with it? And so that's what we have done here. Now, in terms of types of clinical validation that I aspire to, we're building that now. Most of the clinical validation you'll see, certainly in skincare, is flawed. It's flawed because the tools that we're using to do it are 50 years old.
Mm.
So we're using new tools to get real world evidence. How is it that it's really working in the population? And for the areas that we're working in, you're going to start seeing the stuff that we are doing moving forward is going to transform that. We're going to engage with our customers to not just be consumers of that information, but actually to be stakeholders in the generation of it. So it meets their needs. And then the laboratory methods in the microbiome are still early. Um, the foundation of what we do is sequencing. We're sequencing an entire ecosystem. So we have about 25,000 genes. Your microbiome has at least two, maybe 300 times that. And remember, we've lost a lot of that. So I can't find it in you or anyone else. That's why studying this population of hunter-gatherers who still have the full complement is so important. So what I will tell you and your customers is pay attention. This is really important that this work be done. Here's a totally non-controversial statement. At some point in the future, everything that we eat, everything we put on our skin, our agriculture, and our healthcare is going to be transformed by things we still have yet to learn about our relationship to this ancient global microbial planet. And the amount of time it's going to take to get to that place is a function of whether or not we decide to prioritize it in terms of research dollars, in terms of efforts, in terms of in the marketplace. If you decide to spend your money on products that are not validated, then that's what they will sell you.
Yeah.
So we all deserve better, but there's a lot of hard work to be done between here and there. And someone who's been working in the microbiome as long as almost anyone here, um, I will tell you that the wonder of this, the excitement, is all of the unknown in front of us, and all of the things, because once we start to understand our relationship to the invisible part of the world in which we live, which is the foundation and the wellspring of the resilience which underlies our health, the benefits will be available to all of us. And so I don't know if that's the answer to your question. It's a damn good answer to some question.
Well, you and I think we could do a whole podcast just, I mean, easily. I mean, we could go even longer than that, but just talking about the history of how we got here. And I think that's a lot about what we're talking about. I'm curious too, just for I think like a tactical thing that maybe listeners would be thinking about when it comes to skin Symbiome and just some of the products that are out there. What's the benefit from them that they're not even understanding? We talked a lot about the history here, but what are they? Okay, so I use Symbiome versus, I don't know, name any other product that I can go. I personally don't buy these products, but if you go get some lotion or something for your skin, like, because people are still, like you said, they're conditioned to what they know, and what they know is just the old paradigm. How can we like
Okay,
shift the paradigm and say, listen, you need to switch your skin hair care because you're going to get these results? And I don't think people understand what the benefit would be.
sure. And the easiest way to think about that is the following. Think about what we lost. We lost one, this it's basically this microbial rust proofing layer, the thing that prevented oxidation and inflammation to the same thing. It's going on in your gut all the time, and now it's going on our skin. We lost it. So we're all rusting. Some of us are rusting faster than others. So by making these biologically intact ferments that restore much of what it is we've lost, we can slow that oxidation down. And there's a big focus on
And
lung.
Larry, it sounds
Yeah.
like, sorry, but it sounds almost like when I'm listening to you speak, you're talking about a skincare product. You put it on your skin, but
Yes.
it sounds like it has, and from what we've just talked about historically, there's so much we don't know. But we see studies right now where we see that the skin biome is talking to the brain. Like there's a gut skin brain access, right? And I mean, I think people are missing that too. So it's like what you're talking about is that what you put on your skin matters at a cellular level, right?
Everything. Here's the biggest takeaway from the microbiome after all these years. Everything is connected. So your skin is your largest organ. It's bigger than you think that it is. We used to teach it's about 1.7 meters squared. Well, it would be if it was perfectly flat and two-dimensional, but it's not. If you take all of these areas, the follicular area, it's closer to 20 to 25 meters squared. Okay, and at any given time, between 15 and 50% of your flow is going through your skin. So
Wow.
if we have oxidation and inflammation going on there, the products of that are washing right into the central circulation all the time. So the
Wow.
first part is it's all connected. Skin brain, blood brain, gut brain, we put things into respective buckets. We take them apart because that's convenient for us to try to understand something as complex. But that is an abstraction that has no basis in reality. They are all connected. They are all of a piece, which is why, in fact, we use the word symbiome, because that implies the connection between all of these pieces. The second one is So we're all rusting because we don't have that layer. Remember I told you, um, they don't sunburn and they don't get skin cancer. And so part of the problem of not having that layer is that allows all of the damage that we get from UVA and UVB, most of it's oxidation, and then there is some damage to DNA. Well, the oxidation they're not seeing because that microbial layer prevents that from happening. And it's much more complex than just saying,
Wow.
well, I'm going to add this antioxidant or that antioxidant. It literally channels the flow of electrons so that they not only don't do destructive work, they actually do constructive work. And we're only beginning to understand that. The second piece is we don't have all the secondary metabolic products. These include things like fat-soluble vitamins and carotenoids. They used to have a yeast. We used to have a yeast on our skin that made retinoids. We don't have it
Wow.
anymore. And not just the retinoids that we think of in terms of as cosmetic ingredients, but an entire spectrum of these things. And when you take one of these ferments and you start looking at it under instruments like mass spec, the complexity is mind-boggling. I'll use a metaphor. NASA did an experiment called the Deep Field Experiment, and they pointed the Hubble at the darkest piece of space they could find. And after accumulating images for a year and a half, what they found in the darkest piece of space was 10,000 galaxies. And as we start looking into the complexity of our biology at a microscopic level rather than a macroscopic level, what we're going to find is that degree of complexity. And so in order for us with our degree of understanding to wrap our head around these systemic things, we take them apart into respective pieces, but that's not how they work. So what we're trying to do is use biologically intact materials. So for almost all of our skincare products have these fermented oils that leverage the complex biology of these microbial ecosystems, have them produce the metabolites and the components that we no longer have because we don't have that ecosystem there, and then put them into products that are very familiar: cleansers, lotions, creams, things like that. So I take all this complexity, with, by the way, we still don't understand, and we're kind of a long way from doing it, but we know that it is what it looked like when it was intact, and we put it into something very familiar. Now, when you put it on, most people find that their skin is improved. Now I have your attention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with AO Biome, that's what you saw. You put it on, your skin was improved. What if I told you, well, it lowered your blood pressure? 6 millimeters systolic, 4 diastolic. May not sound like much, but it is. And you know what? People actually used it. One of the problems with hypertension in this world is that people don't take their medication. They don't take their medication because it's got side effects they don't like and other reasons. But people use Mother Dirt, you know why? Because they like what they saw in the mirror. And in
Bingo.
doing so, they had a systemic effect. Now, compare that to the way we make the way we make most cosmetics. I put this ingredient to fix this problem and this ingredient to put that problem, and those are discrete ingredients. It's not biologically intact. They're discrete ingredients there. We don't know how they exactly they all will work together there. What we've done is we've used a linear logic. Problem A, ingredient B, outcome C.
Right.
And we're actually reasonably good at that. That's what we do with medicine. We take a disease, we give you a diagnosis, then we treat it with a novel, patentable foreign substance that we use to ameliorate the symptoms of a disease we don't understand. As I said, we're good at this.
Yep.
But along the way, we're always breaking things that we don't understand. What we're trying to do here is not treat disease, but restore health. And as I said, the only way to do that is to actually know what it looked like. And so that's what this 7 years of work has been. Now, there's another piece to this, which is because we're rusting and starving. Rusting, starving skin is acne, eczema, rosacea, and psoriasis. That's what those things are. They manifest differently in different individuals. 85, 90% of us get acne It doesn't exist in hunter-gatherer populations at all. It is a disease of Western industrialized civilization. So if we can put this back, it might look like we're treating your problem, but in fact, what we're doing is restoring the resilience so that we don't need to treat the problem. The problem doesn't occur. That's what we're aspiring to. Again, I don't want to imply we're all the way there yet. I don't even know how far along we are. What I know is this is a journey that we all should want to participate in. Let's all get healthy together. Let's demand health in healthcare, health instead of disease. Now, I'm not saying we should stop doing this because we have a lot of disease and we need that, but that's what we do with everything. Shouldn't we divert a little bit of our everything to the why are these things occurring? Why are they growing? Interesting study was reported a couple of years ago that the incidence of skin disease and skin problems is growing. It's growing fastest in the wealthy countries and the wealthy demographics. Those who have access to the best of the best treatments seem to have the worst skin. Now, I'm not going to try to draw a causal relationship. All I can tell you is whatever we're doing, we deserve better. It's not working. And so that's the journey that we have gone back in time to build this reference and then to use that reference to try to find a way to live in our modern world with the health that was our evolutionary legacy. The other part of this is, our best-selling product, which is the answer. We don't need stem cells. We all have them, or we wouldn't have skin. Our skin refreshes itself, renews itself, turns over. When you're a little baby, it's about every 4 or 5 weeks. When you're as old as I am, it can be 3 or 4 months. Because we are oxidizing, because we are starving, that impacts the turnover time. And so one of the prime ingredients is not just to restore the health of your skin through these ferments, but also to provide your stem cells with what they're missing. And for that, we use what's called stem cell conditioned media. That is everything that stem cells make when they're growing healthy. It's food, it's peptides, it's exosomes, it's all kinds of things that are part of restoring that component, because we are not your microbiome and your host skin. They are all of a part. And our notion of how we take ourselves out of context is actually the source of most of our problems. We treat ourselves as separate, apart from rather than a part of the biology which is manifest itself. This is a microbial planet. If I were to show you the genetic map of life on this planet, almost everything on it would be microbial. And there's a tiny little branch called the Pistakanta, and that's all animals and fungus on the same little branch. So we need to restore our biologic identity, not this cultural identity that we've adopted, which is making us sick. And I'll give you an idea how ingrained this is. I'm going to give you a word, and your listeners, a word. I'll give you a moment. I want you to call forth an image in your head. Don't tell me what it is. Okay?
Okay.
Here's your word, nature. Tell me when you have an image.
I have one already.
You got any people in that image?
No.
So I've done this in front of 3,000 people. I've done it in front of people. I've done it in front of 4 or 5 times before, and still no hands go up. We took ourselves out of context. We need to bring ourselves back into context of the biology, which is a wellspring of our health,
Wow.
and make better decisions.
Yeah. Huge. Man, I know you have to leave here in like 5 minutes, so I know we gotta wrap this up. Any last words? I definitely want to call to action, let people know where they can either connect with you or Symbiome, and where they can get all this. Is that the best selling product? Is the answer?
The answer is our best-selling product right now. Yeah.
Okay. And I have a selfish question to ask you, because my son recently got impetigo because my 7-year-old, he got a cut and then he went out and did jujitsu, And he did that for a week, but the cut kept opening because it kept getting, reopened from doing jujitsu and doing all this stuff. And then he got impetigo. And this is serendipitous and fortuitous that I'm talking to you, because I was thinking, oh man, I unfortunately I had to use an antibiotic, which I didn't want to use. I had to use that. But the doctor, I guess, looked at it. He goes, yeah, it's healing fine, but he's probably gonna have some scarring there. And I'm like, no way. Like, come on. Like, I'll
The
use
answer.
red light. Yeah. So the answer. Okay. But I was also thinking, for anybody else listening, I'm not the only one who has a kid or someone else who's doing jujitsu. I would imagine there'd be like part of that problem when, impetigo and a lot of these things that you see, like ringworm or staph, right? Staphylococcus is a big one that a lot of guys get. I'm imagining though, if your skin microbiome or the skin biome is robust and resilient and has a good microbiome and biofilm, you're not going to get any of these things anyways.
So this is the, germ theory of health. So, when we see a disease or problem, what we do is, you know, we look for who caused it. I don't know if this works in your households than I do, but it's like whoever had it last broke it.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's a metaphor I want you to think about. Um, as I said, our genome's about 20. We have about 25,000 genes. Your microbiome has at least a healthy microbiome in these hunter-gatherers at least 200 to 300 times that big. So think of the game Jenga, okay? And if each block is a unit of genetic or metabolic function, if the tower is 300 blocks tall, one of those is human, and the rest is your microbiome. When we moved out of living as hunter-gatherers, what we did is we pulled blocks out. The tower still stands, but what it's lost is resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, we can look for this in us, but we're not going to find the missing blocks because we're all missing them. And when we see a disease, that's the last block or two blocks before the tower falls.
Right.
What we're not seeing is the missing blocks, which set in motion a series of events which lost the resilience so that it was vulnerable to that. And the more resilient it is, the less likely that something that starts as a cut or whatever it is going to progress in that direction. As I said, I can't put the microbiome back. We're just starting, but we know we've found a way with these ferments to restore a lot of what is lost, not everything. And, in terms of, the skin healing, this is, um, stem cell conditioned media is one of the human stem cell conditioned media is one of the most studied ingredients in medicine. I first encountered it when I was back in medical school, when it was being used for burn patients. And so whenever there is you're concerned about scarring or healing, this enhances it because instead of your stem cells being working starving and under stress, you're feeding. And just think of this as our products are skin food. So people can find them at Symbiome, SYMBIOME.com. And if there's any questions, we welcome them. Send them in. If they're for, if they're for me, they'll steer them to me. Look, we're all on this journey together. As I said, I don't see myself in the skincare business. I see myself in the health business because we all deserve that.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I went into medicine. And today, this is the best way that I can try to give back to all of the gifts that I've been given by all of the amazing teachers and mentors I encountered along the way. Let's go on this journey together. I invite you all to join me.
Larry Weiss, Symbiome, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I appreciate you. This was enlightening. I appreciate this.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to do it again anytime.
Yeah, let's do it. Awesome. Bye.
Okay.